left, right off each arm. It takes me several tries to get it. I'll have to do a clip and show you. Yeah, it's kind of like a magician trick or something. But yeah, it's a lot of practice. And over the years, I've done it with bottle caps, rocks, just whatever I can find. You know, we don't have quarters in there. Or doing left, right.
Got it. We're live on YouTube, by the way, just to let everyone know.
All right.
And I'm going to tweet that link out, Tanisha.
Sure.
Well, hello to everybody.
I know.
My first time being in a college class. Our class is, yeah.
We're in a college class, and let me just.
So this is streaming on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm
I guess to catch a live streaming show on YouTube, I've seen a couple of Facebook Live shows. I really need to start utilizing that, getting authors interested in doing shows on Facebook Live. That one too. Yeah.
Okay. Let's get started. And who is all here in terms of class? Because I've been doing other stuff.
Yeah, no, it's like Jake.
Jake, are you here? And Brian.
Hey.
Brian.
Oh, with less hair.
Class.
Brian has less hair.
Brian.
What'd you do?
Finally got a haircut.
Got a haircut.
I love it. Well, we're going to get started here because we just don't know. I mean, hey, Chris, you're going to mute your phone when you're not talking.
Or I might let me.
Oh, wait, I'm not allowed to. Oh.
Yeah, give me. I could try and do it with control. I can try.
We got it figured out. I can do it.
Yeah, you got it.
So.
Yeah, so you just unmute him when you ask him a question, kind of thing.
So, Chris, now I'm trying to unmute.
I think you muted him.
Maybe. Oh. Chris, I'm just going to mute you when we're not. If everyone could mute themselves, just because sometimes it comes in and other, those, like, you never know what happens. So, all right. So welcome to Writing and Fighting, Fall 2020. It is September 16th. I'm in a different position, you guys. I'm in a desk that I've built. I think I already told you about this. But these are the things you love in 2020. We have a very special guest who's coming from Parchman Prison in Mississippi. And we are very lucky to have him. Tanisha and I have got to know Chris over a couple months here. We're working on a project with him, and he's a writer. He's a media mogul. He is a writing mentor. He's a boxing trainer, and he also happens to be serving a life sentence in Parchman Prison, one of the most crowded, violent, and inhumane prisons in the world. And how is he able to do this? How is it actually something that's considered misconduct? And because it's not part of a program, how is it that we need prison reform? We're going to talk about that. We're going to get into everything as much as possible. So grateful to have you here, Chris. Quickly, Tanisha, can you introduce yourself and then Brian?
Sure, I'm Tanisha. Very grateful to be working on this project with Nancy and always part of the Writing and Fighting series here. I am a media psychologist. I have my PhD in media psychology, teach courses in the Department of Psych, and also just do a lot of independent consulting in the media space for community management and content development. So I'm grateful to be here. Very blessed to be able to not only know Nancy, but also be introduced via her to Chris and hear his story and try and do everything that we can to help tell his unique story that we're obviously going to get to and start sharing right now. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. As Nancy chugs her Coke.
I know. Thank you. We really appreciate, and we have our fellow friend, always a great contribution to our discussions, Brian Siskant.
Well, hello. Hey, thanks everybody for allowing me to be present for this. I'm really looking forward to it. And so, yes, I'm an artist and a podcaster and a filmmaker, and I do a lot of this.
Ooh.
I'm holding up a gigantic drone.
Drone. It looks like some sort of like arachnoid. I've never.
Yeah,
Ooh.
Yeah, that's like something out of the mist
Oh.
that like
Yeah,
just
when you-
come
when you
out and
fly-
grab people.
when you fly a drone in the South, you're always looking at possibly getting shot at too. So it's fun. But yeah, so I'm just happy to be a part of this discussion and looking forward to hearing what Chris has to say.
Thank you, Brian. And then we have some students, Dashawn and Jake. You guys just want to say hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I think, Jake, you're coming in from the West Coast?
No, I'm from Jersey.
Jersey. I don't know where that, sorry. This is a professor, And thank you so much for coming to this guest speaking. And Dashawn, you're coming in from outside New York as well, New Jersey?
New Jersey, yes.
New Jersey representing. All right. Well, please, this is a roundtable. We welcome your questions. And, I think, Tanisha, can you get us started? Because we had a text today and you kind of thought of like where we should start this conversation.
Yeah, we were very fortunate to Chris. It's funny how this kind of all started. We've been doing these writing and fighting series for several months, especially since the quarantine happened. I think since April, we got a pretty good regular routine of doing these every other week or so. And randomly, we got a DM from Chris. And Nancy did, got a DM from Chris introducing himself and his very unique story of being arrested at 18, then sentenced to life in prison, Parchman, Mississippi, which, as Nancy said, Unit 29, one of the most notorious or being notorious for being completely inhumane. I know we'll get into some of the news about it lately with the ACLU suing, winning because of the implorable conditions that people like Chris have to continually endure. I know Jay-Z has been also very active and involved in prison reform, and specifically this institution in Parchman. And we feel that Chris's story here is one that not a lot of people are privy to. Not a lot of people have access like this. So we really want to take this opportunity to be fully transparent. We want everybody to know that, Chris is very honest or forthcoming, and it is also, putting himself at risk and even having these types of conversations, because as we're talking right now, he is doing this like from his cell in prison. And so we want to be completely respectful, because when we talk about prison reform, it's very easy to forget that these are human beings. We're talking about people. We're talking about real people just like us. And if we think quarantine and wearing a mask is somehow infringing upon our individual rights, you have no fucking idea what Chris sees and has to deal with every single day of his life for 20 plus years now. And so when we talk about police reform, we're talking about how to improve the conditions of other human beings. That is what this is about, because what they have to deal with, what Chris specifically has to endure, the mental fortitude and strength you have to every day find a reason to keep going, to keep striving, is something I don't know I would be able to do. So I wanted to kind of just open and preface with that. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Chris and just say thank you first. Thank you for being here. Thank you for offering and sharing your voice, because this is something that, like I said, not a lot of people have access to. And so with that, yeah, if you would just like to kind of like say hello and, say how we got here, and we'll just dive into your story.
Hey, Tanisha, thank you for that. It's been very unusual how I got here to begin with. Like you said, the direct message led me here, but a lot came before that. The the account that I seen that from was set up by my PR service, Henry Roy PR. And so I've been doing PR work for indie publishers for 5 years now, a little over 5 years. And that started back in 2015 when Crime Wave Press gave me a shot as an intern. They hired me for an internship for about 6 months. And they liked what I was doing on social media with self-published books that I had wrote and a friend of mine, Roy Harper, had written. And so I pitched my friend Roy's book to them, Shank and Heist. It's a two-part series, crime thriller. They loved it, published it, and they wanted to keep us as a team. And they thought our story was fantastic, just like you do. Tom Vodder, the publisher there, is a very well-known journalist, and so he has a lot of experience dealing with the in and outs of these type of places all over the world. And he wanted to keep me on to help Roy and represent him and run social media. And so he gave me a shot, taught me the ropes, and turned me loose on the Crime Wave Press accounts. And it wasn't too long before other people were taking notice and were like, "Hey, we want you to do the same for us." And so that's how it began. And during those 5 years, I've built my service, and I'm working for 4 publishers now. I have over 20 clients, several employees, book tour service that's doing very well, Blackthorn Book Tours. And I have some employees here recently hired, guys that most people on the street would look at and say, "There's no way." There's no way I would buy anything from that guy, or I wouldn't hire him. You know, these guys are covered in tattoos and have long rap sheets, you know, and so that's what we're really here to talk about today. And what I would like everybody to know, that in prison reform, the people are worried about getting out of here, there is potential for real rehabilitation. It's just not being done in Mississippi. And we suffered a huge defeat here recently. The governor of Mississippi vetoed a parole bill that we fought for at another organization I'm a part of, Kids of 47 Years, and that Tanisha and Nancy are helping with now as well. And so it was almost a year fight with a petition to revise the parole laws and organizing prison pressure groups and contacting, networking with those sorts of people, contacting senators, just lobbying every day, pushing. And the result was the House and the Senate at the legislature passed this parole bill, and it was stunning the way it went through. And then we were just so sure the governor was going to sign it, and he vetoed it. And so it was shocking here. I mean, the atmosphere here when that happened was it was very thick, very dark, and it could have erupted into violence, you know, at any minute. And so that's all everybody talked about for months leading up to that. Was I'm getting out. When I get out, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, I'm going to do right, I'm going to get off drugs, I'm never going to come back, and that sort of thing. And some guys are like, "Hey, as soon as I get out, I'm going to go get drugs and, you know, whatever." But there's a lot of guys that I've worked with have been the worst offenders. They are the most violent knuckleheads you can imagine in here. Long rap sheets. They're known for stabbing people, hitting officers in the head with fan motors, that sort of thing. I mean, just crazy knucklehead stuff. And it's because they've had nobody to mentor them, to lead them by example. Nobody they could look at and say, "Hey, I like what this guy is doing. I could do that. I could apply myself just like he's doing and learn that, and I'll have something to do. I will have purpose in life." There's no purpose in life, like Tanisha was saying. You get up every day, you have to find a reason not to hang yourself, or, you know, I mean, it's that bad. It really is, especially where I'm at now in 29. I got a note from a guy 2 days ago, as a matter of fact, a guy, his nickname is Snow. And he said, "Hey, man," he wrote this out, and he said, "Hey, I liked what you were doing with Tyler." It's another guy I was training for many years. And he said, I couldn't believe it. Good job on that. He completely changed. You know, still snaps out every once in a while, but you really did a lot of good work with him. And I want to get down with you guys in your boxing group, so I may hit you up for some exercise tips. He said, I've been really struggling with drugs and mental illness, and I'm thinking about killing myself. You know, he said, and I can't do that. I have a life sentence. And so that's a very common story here. That's I've had a bunch of notes like that over the years. And, you know, guys, where I'm at now, this is like a crack house, and I'm not exaggerating. It's not, instead of crack, there's spice and ice. And that's all these guys do all day long, trading, buying, selling, trays, toilet paper, whatever they got. They'll sell their sheets, their shoes, or mattress for a line of ice or for a spice joint. And that's their reason to get up every day. The majority of guys in here, when they get up in the morning, they're going to be really, really inconvenienced. They're going to inconvenience everybody else until they can get something to smoke or snort. And that's their whole day. They run a scheme on how to get high. And the administration is aware of all of this, and they allow it to happen to a great degree. I mean, they are understaffed here. They're overwhelmed, and that's what they would say, you know, hey, you know, we need more money to come in here so we can hire staff to provide security and stop all these problems. But there's a lot more that they could be doing, a lot more, and they just turn their back and allow it to happen. The administrators for the last decade or so here have allowed rampant drug use to take place and mental illness. Mental illness has it should be a crime, I think, in my opinion. What Tanisha was touching on earlier about prison reform here, being careful, to be mindful that prisoners are humans as well. If any of you were in here, you could see what mental illness has done to people. You could see one guy today and he looks fine, and see him a year later, 2 years later, which is nothing in here. Years go by and it's nothing. And then next time you see him, he's on a Haldol shot and can barely talk, drooling, or he just looks like a psych patient. Hair disheveled, clothes nasty, doesn't wash. And I'm like, man, what happened to this guy? Well, prison, parchment happened to him. And, the government, go ahead.
No, I was just going to jump in, because there's a lot that you've said here that's just so powerful. And it's like the lack of alternative, like you said, and the absence of purpose, like as individuals. Because when we talk about like prison reform and stuff, like they're labeled correctional facilities. It's supposed to correct a behavior, right? It's a rehabilitation correctional facility. You did a crime, you go to this correctional place, they will fix it by providing you programs and things to supposedly do that, right? That's why this was all built supposedly on paper. And then when deemed fixed, for lack of a better word, then you're released. But what you're illustrating, and what so many continue to ignore, is that whole correctional part is what's absent. That whole rehabilitation is absent.
Yes.
And as a result, it's filled in with corruption, because, look, you're able to write books and be, a publisher and have employees and stuff. There's people out here with internet and six figures that don't do that shit. But it's like, you're doing that in prison because of resources and things that you've been able to get, contraband, whatever, iPhones. Like, we saw videos earlier that you shared with Nancy and I about how you make coffee, and like, it's just fascinating MacGyver shit. But it's like, and so the drugs and stuff, and the way that it's corrupting, the lack of resources and staff and money and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we know every independent state probably say these types of excuses, but these drugs and ice and spice, the things that you've called it, where is it coming from? Or are they just like made up drugs like within there, or it's coming in from somewhere?
Well, it's okay. So overseas, they have these big factories that produce K2, the chemicals K2 in spice, and it's sold as something not for like incense. It's sold as incense, not for human consumption. And they have synthetic amphetamines that is sold as bath salt. And it's not actually bath salt. It's just synthetic amphetamines labeled that so they could sell it as a Schedule 1. And they ship that stuff over here and it's distributed dirt cheap. I mean, dirt cheap. You can get ice in here, synthetic ice, cheaper than on the street. A line on the street would be $10-$20, and here it's, a roll of toilet paper or a bar of soap. I mean, it's crazy. And so, like you were saying, the corrections thing, it's, the government took responsibility for us, for prisoners. When they incarcerated prisoners, it's their responsibility to correct us, to rehabilitate us. And they have failed. They have failed the prisoners. They have failed our families. They have failed the state who is paying them to do this. And let me give you an example. It's Unit 29 in particular is notorious for a lot of things. A few years back, we had a commissioner named Marshall Fisher. He was the worst commissioner ever, in my opinion. He was former law enforcement, super tough on crime, and he started this cycle of mass lockdown. And so every time he would lock down 1,000 men here, every time, not just once, it's nothing by chance or happenstance. Every time there would be gang fights would break out because the mass lockdown means no visitation, no phone calls, no canteen. When you're not getting any canteen, you got all these guys in here that they need canteen so they can pay their debts to the drug guys. And then there's all kinds of little, scheming, backbiting, stealing stuff going on, and then no canteens coming in here, big problem. No canteen, you can't smoke, you can't get high. Huge fights break out. And every time he did this mass lockdown, there was fights, stabbings, and even officers getting assaulted. Nearly every time there was officers getting assaulted. And you know what he would do? When these incidents jumped, he would go to the public and to the correctional chairman and the legislature and say, hey, I need money. We need money so we can hire staff and solve these security issues. And then they would take us off lockdown eventually and start yard call, and the routine would start going back to normal again. And then they would find contraband, like a contraband bust on the kitchen truck or something. They'd come over here from another unit. They would find a bunch of contraband and they lock them down. And they wouldn't just punish the inmates or the officers that were involved in that isolated incident. They would punish 1,000 men, all of us. And we're like, man, what did we do? Why are you taking our canteen, our visitation, our yard call? We're stuck in these cells with nothing but screaming and chaos, especially in the summer because there's no AC here. It's nothing but rats and roaches and mosquitoes, and it's just nasty. And so we need to get out of our cell. And he would do this mass lockdown for months at a time, not just a few days, but it would go on for 1 month, 2 months, sometimes 3 months. Sometimes that was the thing. He would send out a memo saying, next time we find major contraband like this, 90 days lockdown, everybody. And we're like, man, who is it? What is it? Who does this guy think he is? And so every time he was doing that, he was committing crimes against every man in here, 1,000 men. And you couldn't believe the mental illness that was going on, how it got worse and worse and worse, and the violence. And they knew this. The administrators knew it. The captains here talk about it. The administration, the wardens here know it, and that commissioner knew that. And he kept doing it, and he kept doing it, and kept doing it. That man has committed more crimes against more people than anybody probably in the state's history. Not only against us as all these prisoners in here, but against our families too, and against the state. And you know what happened to him? He got paid for it. He got a paycheck for that. And so we were so relieved when a new commissioner took over. It was Felicia Hall, and then she just really picked up where he left off. She just imitated what he was doing, his policy, and so she did mass lockdowns for a while. And then she finally stopped all that. And so she didn't last long. She's out of office now. We have a new commissioner, a guy named Burl Kane. He was a former warden in Louisiana State Penitentiary for a couple of decades, and he is pro-reform. The governor appointed this guy, and it's interesting to see what happens. I'm actually very happy he's the commissioner. After he has several interviews he's done where he talks about his policy, his correctional philosophy, and he has helped a ton of lifers in Louisiana get out. Has personally helped individual cases so they could get parole and get seen to and help them get out. And in one interview, he one case, there was a lifer he had life without parole as a black guy, and Burl Cain's a white guy, and he's like, man, he went to the governor and was like, hey, why can't this guy get parole? He's the coolest prisoner in the prison. He's the best guy in a prison. If this guy can't get parole, there's going to be no hope for anybody. So we have to do something. And they didn't. They wouldn't pardon him. So, but he did get that guy back in court and got him a lesser sentence, and I think he did get out eventually. So when our governor appointed this new commissioner and this parole law was pushing through legislation, we were just like, man, big difference here, huge difference. But the governor vetoed that. So that's where we are now. And kids with 47 years,
Yes.
y'all, what we're going to be doing. Yes, we're going to keep fighting.
As you've been talking, I've been sharing my screen with some of the photos of your boxing. I call it the Chris Roy Boxing Club, as well as, and then your writing team, as well as unfortunately showing, what the conditions are in Parchman. And that's all came out. And I think it's interesting. And I kind of also want to go back because like Brian, Jake, and Deshaun, I want them to know also your story a little bit. I mean, what's compelling about combat sports is, yes, it's the conflict between two people and it happens. But it's also the storyline. And I'd love to see how Chris Roy also became a writer and is able, with his Galaxy, is it a Galaxy, whatever version of phone you're able to get?
Yes, I have. Yes.
So, can you take us back just real briefly? I know you've kind of already shared with Tanisha and I, but how you came to be Parchman and then how you became a boxing trainer / PR owner / writer.
Okay, so I grew up on the Mississippi coast at Ocean Springs, and I was a gearhead. I loved to play with tools, and I took apart everything from go-karts, bicycles, cars, motorcycles, you name it, and I had a ton of that stuff growing up. I've never owned anything new. It was all stuff I bought used or found somewhere, or junk pile stuff, and I took it home and fixed it up. And my mom would bring stuff home for me and my brother to take apart and play with. It was that kind of thing. And we lived in a little trailer next to a bayou, and that was our thing. We, as kids, we built forts in the woods and swam in the bayou, and so I've had my share of playing with alligators and water moccasins, and I used to do that until my sister was born, and my mom told me to cut that crap out. I couldn't bring it in the house anymore. And
Showing
so that was.
Your baby pictures and your childhood pictures, by the way.
Oh man. Yeah.
We're seeing it.
So yeah, I had a really good childhood. My mom, my dad wasn't around. My mom did a really good job. She just, I didn't listen to her. She would sit me down many times and tell me, hey, you need to stop this, and this is why. And I was like, all right. So I would quit for a while. I started stealing stuff and, bicycles, whatever. And I got in trouble, went to juvenile detention a few times. I went to Columbia Training School when I was 13. And then after that, I stayed out of trouble for several years. And then I got into selling drugs. And so my mom, sat me down several times and told me about that. And I would stop, and then I would just figure out a way around it. And I had this thing about, beating the system or beating, if it was just a building, I was like, man, this thing's like really secure. I wonder how I can get in there. And I just had this curiosity of, could I get in there? And it was like the same kind of curiosity about an engine. I want to know what's in that. I want to take it apart and see how it works. And so I got into trouble like that. And with drugs, it was more of a status thing. I didn't have a mom and dad with money. When my mom bought us clothes or something like that, it was Kmart special. She worked at Kmart, and then later she got a job as a nurse and did really well. But when I was real little, in Ocean Springs, most of the kids they come from middle class. They had money. They had chrome bicycles and Nikes, and we didn't have that unless we found it at a thrift store for $5 or something, and we can act like we got it new. So I wore a lot of thrift store clothes and had everything I had was used. And the drug thing, I got into it. I like to be known as a guy that can get things, and so my friends in school, I didn't have a brand new jacked up Toyota pickup truck my dad bought me that made me popular. I had weed. You want to smoke a joint? Hey, I know where to get it. Go to Chris's house. And so that turned into LSD. And then my junior and senior year, it was cocaine and ecstasy, and we were throwing parties all the time, keg parties. We would go to New Orleans and raves and all that stuff. So I was into that. Made a ton of money. When I was 17, my mom kicked me out because I wouldn't stop. And then she was worried that I was going to, get my sister involved in that or hurt somehow. Somebody was going to come to the house and hurt us or something. And at that time, I was working with Vietnamese drug clique. It wasn't really a gang. They were called the 211. It was Vietnamese kids. Teenagers, they were running everything back then in the 90s, cocaine, ecstasy, weed,
Chris,
and a lot of it.
I have a question. Like, how much money were you bringing home at 17 from the?
Well, hundreds a week, 1,000, and I was still working full time and going to school. Actually, I had a job at a transmission shop in Van Cleve. And so, yeah, I actually failed 12th grade because I missed too many days. I didn't fail any grade all the way up until 12th, and I missed too many days because I was doing business. I missed too many days, and I didn't keep up with it. I forgot how many days I missed, and I kept doing business, and I missed it. My grades were okay, but I had to repeat it, and I almost didn't go back. And so I decided, I really don't remember what made me decide to repeat 12th grade, to go back and get my diploma. And I had a shot at a scholarship at Nashville Auto Diesel Tech at a tech school. And so from winning some mechanic competitions in 11th and 12th grade, and I needed to go back and do it again and be eligible for the scholarship. And so I was like, man, this is what I'm going to do. I need to get my diploma, go back and graduate, go to tech school, and get away from this drug crap. I was having problems with this Vietnamese guy that I was doing business with, and I was just done with that. I just felt like at that time in my life, this is something that I need to get away from. It's getting way too serious. I mean, I was driving around. I had a SKS with a 30-round clip behind my seat. Just
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's,
it was and so.
Is that a handgun or is that a bigger?
Assault rifle, an assault rifle, yes.
Oh, as a 17-year-old or 18-year-old.
We were going. My partner and I, the guy that's on this murder charge with me, well, he took a lesser sentence of manslaughter, testified against me. He got 20 years, and so he's been out for 10 years now. He did 10, and then let him go. And so he and we used to go to these parties, clubs in Biloxi and Gulfport, New Orleans, and we would have, hundreds of ecstasy pills and go in there. And when we'd leave, or, we'd have like cargo pants and just pockets just stuffed full of balled up cash, and so that would be a normal night for us, a normal weekend. And,
it's hard. I'm sure that was a lot more than what you were making at the auto mechanic. So I can see.
I worked for my uncle's salvage yard from the time I was 10 or 11. I started working at junkyards in Biloxi, just cutting grass. And then when I was 12, they gave me a job pulling parts. They was like, hey, this kid can turn wrenches. So they had me, a little grease monkey, climbing over everything and taking apart stuff, and they put me on a slab tearing apart engines, and so I learned engines. I had my hand on every kind of car from the 70s to the 90s, every kind of car part, and I was really good at that. And so I moved up from tearing down engines, cleaning them, stocking a warehouse, to parts puller. And then so I was taking customers out in the yard, these little junk cars, and taking stuff off. And I did that every summer and every holiday for years up until I was 17, and I was only making $200 a week. And I made way more than that selling drugs. And so my uncle, who he died a couple years ago, he had the story he told that when I quit, I told him that I make more money in a night than I do working for you for a month, and so I'm done with this, and I left and I got the job at the transmission shop, and that really, I made twice as much money. I was making $300 to $400 a week there, and then I was still throwing parties, selling drugs, and so I had a pretty good income. I had several trucks. I had a Jeep. I had a little 240Z. I had a Suzuki 900, crotch rocket. I could go on about all kinds. I had a jet boat. I had a 20-foot jet boat with a 460 big block in it. It was ridiculous. So I'm just buying. I was buying stuff and having fun,
Roy, I want to tell everyone Chris, he's the best when he describes cars in his literature. It is the best. And it's part of your character building we were talking about. I don't mean to digress, but I really enjoy that about your writing. So I can
car chases and fight scenes. Yeah, I need to get back into doing that. It's been a while.
So I can see the intoxication of, where you work hard, you get you're doing the straight and narrow, where it's and it's harder to make a living, where it just seems so easy. Plus, you said you're getting the social status and people are looking up to you because
yes, that was it. And
I understand.
So that was, when you're a teenager, it's what your friends think about you is like the entire world. So I was no different in that regard.
Chris, were you related with any gangs then with this?
No.
Got
it. I've never been affiliated. I've known some gang members. My first experience with gangs was actually in juvenile detention center in Pascagoula, and it was all black guys, just like it is here, and they were all gang members, and so after a couple of months in the detention center, I could sit down and draw out all these different gang signs and do the hand signs and all that, but I had never felt any pull to join a gang. And it's, guys here, especially young guys, they come in here and they get around a group of guys they like, and they're like, hey, I like these guys, I'm cool with them, they got my back, I got their back, we get along well, I'm going to get down with them. And so they get put down in whatever gang that is. And so, but guess what? When those guys get transferred or you get transferred, you're still in that gang, and you may get around a group of guys you may not like. And a lot of guys regret getting affiliated for that reason. And so I spotted that early on, and I'm like, man, there's no way. And so I avoided that.
Can we get into how you got into prison?
I got into a fist fight with a Vietnamese guy named Dong Nguyen. He and I went to school together. He went to Ocean Springs. We were the same age. We were both 18 at the time in September of 99. We had a disagreement over some money. I owed him for 4 ounces of cocaine. And so I actually had the money to pay him. I had sold the last of it one night, and I was at a party, and so we drove home. It was 4 of us, me and my friend and his girlfriend and another girl, and they dropped us off. They went home, and me and my buddy were like, man, why did we come home? We still have a little beer here. The party's up. Let's walk back to the party. And so we walked up the street. The party was maybe a mile away, and we didn't get a quarter mile up the road, and 2 deputy sheriffs stopped us in the street. Somebody was in the neighborhood breaking in houses, and they saw us, and automatically, hey, you got to stop and check them. And so they searched us. I've been stopped by the deputy sheriff so many times. They all knew me. I used to throw parties all the time, and they would show up and they're like, "Chris, get these damn cars out of the street," that kind of thing. So they all knew me, and they're like, so as soon as they pulled up, we started pouring out our beer. That was the first thing we did. We started pouring the beer out, and they're like, yeah, y'all know the drill. And put my hands on the hood. They started pulling stuff out of my pockets, and I had $3,800 in cash just balled up, wadded up. You could tell it was from a night of doing business. And so the officer, he took his time counting it out, and he was like, okay. Where did this come from? And I said, man, look, I work here, and I work at home fixing cars. I do, you name it, I can do it. I can install stereos, rebuild engines, whatever. And so I do all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, okay. And he said, let's go down and see what your mom has to say. And they take us home, and my mom comes out, and she is not surprised to see me brought home by the deputy sheriff. So the deputy goes up to her, and he says, ma'am, would you be surprised to know that your son is carrying around $3,800 on him? And she said, no, look, look around here. He works on cars. He installs stereos. He fixes motorcycles. And she started going, it's like the exact same thing I told him. and the guy's like, okay, so he gave the money back. And he was going to give the money back. And right about then, 2 detectives pulled up. They had heard my name on the radio, and when the deputies called it in. And so they took over, and they told them to leave. And so they put me in a car. They took me one way, and they took my buddy the other way. And then they're like, hey, they run down this little thing. We know what you're doing. They ran down the whole little drug ring we were doing. They named my guy, Dong, who we were getting supplied from, my partner, JP. They named a guy named Red, who was a friend of ours. It was in it. And several other people they named. So somebody had been arrested and was talking, is what my feeling was, and I was scared. And they're like, hey, look, we don't want you. We don't want to know about Dawn. We want to know about where Dawn's getting his stuff from. I said, man, look, y'all can take me where you want to take me. I'm done talking. Take me to jail. And so the officers that got the money off of me, they took a bottle of pills out of my pocket. And I actually had a prescription. I had just got out of the hospital for a motorcycle wreck. I had a prescription, and there was a little bit of cocaine in the pill container I completely forgot about. So they found that. They field tested it. It tested positive, and he's like, hey, this is pretty good stuff, I was like, yeah, okay. So the detectives they threatened me. They said, look, we could take you to jail and charge you for this cocaine. And I'm like, well, just take me. I'm not telling you anything. There's no way. So they took me home, dropped me off in front of my house, and left. And I was so relieved. And then I realized they took my damn money. They took my money. I was, God, so, what could I do? I couldn't file a complaint or call their captain or something. They got me. And so I go to Dawn, and I told him what happened. And he's an arrogant little bastard. He doesn't want anything I have except the money. I had a jet boat. I had a 67 Bronco at the time. I offered both of them. He didn't want it. He wanted his money. So I was like, look, man, I'm not going to sell anything else. He's trying to give me more cocaine so I can come back on the money. I said, man, we need to stay away from each other. You're not understanding this. So that was the issue. And so I said, give me time to sell the boat. And I ended up selling the boat. But by the time I did that, he had called my mom and threatened my mom. He told her he had a 45 of my name on it. He called another friend of mine and told him basically the same thing, that he had a 45 of my name on it. And so now Dong is, he had reason to be arrogant. He had it going on. At 18 years old, he drove a little Honda that looked like a spaceship. He had 2 businesses on Highway 90 in Ocean Springs, prime real estate. One of them was a mechanic shop, really nice place, and partly a chop shop. And right next door, he had a little custom import shop where they sold stereo systems and wheels and tires and custom body kits and that sort of thing. And he owned half of a shrimp boat. I mean, this guy had it going on. And then he had the cocaine business, the ecstasy business, the weed. And so he did not play about his money. These guys were known for showing up and doing drive-by shootings and 20 deep. Those Vietnamese guys would roll up in their Acuras and Hondas 20 deep and beat guys down with baseball bats and tire irons. And so I'm like, man, I do not want this guy coming after me, and his crew. And so, but when he threatened me, he threatened my mom. Well, it was kind of that's a done deal. You're not, no, that's over with. So it went to the next level, and we were both stupid teenagers making one bad decision after another. The next time we met,
Chris, so you are thinking your life is in danger, plus your mom and even your sister?
yes.
Wow.
So it became a him or me situation.
Got it. No, and these are the stakes that happen in this in drugs, in these kind of under I would say corrupt kind of communities, that it goes to those levels. There are the rules don't apply. So I understand. Go ahead.
And so one night I was at my partner JP's house, and we were working on his car. He had this old 54 Bel Air we were working on. We were drinking beer. It was a school night. And Dawn comes by there to deliver some cocaine to him. It was a Marlboro Lights carton full of cocaine. I think there was 6 ounces, 10 ounces, 6 ounces, I think. And so it was supposed to be 10. It was 6. And so Dawn pulls up, and I look at JP like, man, what the hell? And he's like, oh, yeah, man, well, I thought you knew he was coming over. I said, no. And so Dawn comes up, and he sees me. He said, Chris. And this guy is known for carrying weapons. And the only thing I can think of is get on his ass before he pulls out a weapon. And so we were fighting. And he's also usually has security with him. He has these 2 big muscle heads that will go around with him everywhere. And I'm glad they weren't there. And he did not have a weapon on him. So it was, we had a fight, and it was very intense, very, very violent, obviously. And his neck was crushed, and he suffocated and died. And so, it was, JP and I were standing there like, okay, he's dead. JP's freaking out. He ran off at one point when we started fighting. He ran off because I think he had the same idea I did. This guy's going to pull out a gun and start shooting. And so, we were fighting, and then when it was done, I walked off for a second, and and JP walks back, and we're like, okay, what are we going to do? We're kids. I'm 18, he's 19. We call the cops, guess what's going to happen? We've been through this before with the cops. They're going to put us on the front page. Big win for them. They're going to advance their careers off of us. They don't care about us. And so, and then we're going to have all these Vietnamese guys after us. This is not, we need to hide this. So we took Dawn, put him in my truck, and drove him out into the woods way out in Van Cleve and buried him. We put his car in the river, in Pascagoula River. And I went home, went to bed, I went to school the next day. And so 4 months went by.
Wow. You must have, I can't even imagine emotional, what that does with you in your head. And, that is such a... I
covered his face. I couldn't look at him. I covered his face. With the area where it happened at, it was like a little junkyard. Junk cars all over the place, tools and stuff, parts bags, auto parts store bags. There was a bag right there next to him. I grabbed it and I put it on him. And it was like, so now he's not a person anymore type of thing. I didn't, it was just a spur of the moment thing. And the prosecution tried to say, oh, you put the bag on his head to finish him off. No, he was dead for I don't know how long, you know, and I did that before I picked him up and put him in a truck. And so, yeah it just.
And so then also they, well, go ahead, keep telling your story, because they, obviously the body is found, or did someone talk?
Yes. So JP and I were the only ones that knew about that. And 4 months went by. They investigated. They said they talked to over 250 people, and they had no clue who did it. Dong stopped at Red's house, a guy named Red, and he dropped off 10 ounces to Red before he went to JP's house. So the 211 thought that Red did it, and so they told the police that, hey, this guy did it. And they were personally after him, trying to find Red and get him. And so Red, he went to Florida. He left. He's like, man, he knew these guys didn't play either. So he went to Florida, and the FBI task force was involved at that point. And so they went down there and extradited him. And I have the FBI report. Red said, hey, it wasn't me. It was probably Chris and JP. That's the only people it could have been. He ran down this whole thing about me having problems with Dong. And so he took the spotlight off of me and off of him and put it on me, and they came and questioned us. And so they came to my school in October of '99 and got me out of math class, and they brought me to the principal office. And so they had police officers in there, and they're like, hey, you know, we need to speak with you about Dong Nguyen. He disappeared in September. We know you knew him, and we know you did business with him, you know, and I'm just standing there like, okay. And so they're searching me. They searched my book bag, and they found a vial of LSD, liquid LSD, and I'm like, damn, I didn't even know it was in there. That's how crazy it was. I had so much stuff going on that I was losing wads of cash and pills, and my friend popped up one day with a wad of cash. He's like, hey, you know, is this yours? Yeah, I forgot I had that. My mom found a bunch of drugs in my dresser, and I forgot they were there. I had stuff just everywhere. And acid in my book bag, and I had some in my wallet, too. I had paper hits in my wallet, 30-something hits in my wallet. I had no idea they were there. It was just ridiculous. So they arrested me for LSD possession, put me in jail. And I'm in Ocean Springs jail. The chief of police questioned me personally about this. And when he was questioning me, he got a call and he had to leave the office. And I stood up and took a look at the notes on his desk, and it said, cold, streetwise, without remorse. I'm like, man, what? Where did he get that? Why? You know, I didn't understand why he wrote that. And I was like, he's talking about me. Okay. Just because I wouldn't tell him anything, you know, I'm just talking to him like I don't know. You know, I knew the guy, yeah, sure, but I haven't seen him since then. And so I'm cold, streetwise, without remorse. So he just, in his head, I was guilty and done it. And so they let me go. And I had to bond out on that drug charge. And I went to find Red and ask him, you know, they told me, hey, you know, your buddy Red told us everything. You know, so I went to find Red, and Red's running from me now. And then I found out, yeah, he is the one to put the FBI on us. And I'm an idiot. I wanted to kick his ass. I didn't want to hurt him too bad, just beat him up. He was a longtime friend. And I burned his car. He had a graduation present. It was stupid, too. God, it was stupid. I burned his graduation present, a brand new car. And they, you know, I was not arrested for that. And so he hated me for that. And so he signed up as a prosecution witness. He testified against me in my trial and told some lies too. And he made it seem like I was a violent person, even though he's never seen me in any fights. I did not get in fights out there. I was not a violent person. I've been in a couple fights with my brother, you know, my entire life. And even in prison, you know, in 20 years in prison, I have no fights on my record, none at all. And
yeah, no.
So yeah, they painted.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no fight. And so they're trying to say like and Red said Dong was a peaceful guy. He was a violent, notorious drug dealer. He's peaceful, and they bought it. And the only reason that I didn't get a manslaughter conviction, because that's what it really should have been. It was stupid. Yeah, we did hide the body. We had the car. We kept the drugs. There was drugs in there. We did keep that. That's true. But it was still, we were kids making stupid decisions, and it wasn't capital murder like they charged me for, And so they could not prove a robbery. They tried to say that we set Dong up and robbed him and killed him. They could not prove that, so they convicted me of murder. And I had a public defender, and he was the worst lawyer I've ever seen or even heard of. And so the prosecution ran circles around him. They put on a better show. It's all about performance in the courtroom, who puts on the better show for the jury. And they put on the better act, and they got the murder conviction.
Give a capital murder to an 18-year-old when there's no premeditation is quite shocking. Chris, I have to ask, what would you say to that young Chris if you could go back and what kind of state of mind do you think that I'm just curious, what would you want to say to young Chris during this time?
To young Chris, I would have advised him to take off running through the woods wherever, to not fight Dong. That was, yeah. I mean, when I'm put into a fight or flight situation, I don't run. Even here, somebody, I've been tried many, many times, and that's just a common thing in here. They're going to test you, and you can't back down, or other people see it, they sense it, it's instinct in here, and the sharks come to feed. So
yeah,
he got in my face. He got in my face, and my instinct was to fight. But it's kids at that age. They don't have the capacity. They're physically incapable of thinking too far ahead and thinking of consequences. It's it's brain development. The part of the brain that processes consequences is not fully developed at that age. It's not until that's why they are changing these parole laws now. Brain science is working its way into law, and they are finally starting to say, hey, we cannot ignore brain science. We cannot ignore fMRI scans, all these studies, all these big universities are putting out this stuff, and it makes us look stupid not to do something about it. So they're throwing kids away because of poor decisions, and they are physically incapable of looking ahead to the future, saying, okay, if I do this now, a year from now, or whatever, then this is going to happen. Or if I do this, then tomorrow this will happen. They just don't have that capability. So it's hard to say, what I tell what I just said now, I would explain that to them. Hey, your brain, this is brain science, and this is why you're not thinking right now.
Yeah. No, and also to be put in that situation, though, I think we have to recognize that young people are developing their prefrontal cortex, and their reptilian amygdala that is more reactionary and impulsive is overriding that. We have to realize that being put in a situation where your life is at stake is, how can we change that? Because and I'd like to, Tanisha, because I know we want to talk about the writing process, mentorship. But I feel like we have to recognize that we do have individuals are in a situation where they're more prone to be accepted into violent circumstances and to nefarious situations, and it's intoxicating. And we were talking earlier, you never joined a gang. Gangs are very much something that gives you an instant community. You think that you're something, just say you can't ever leave a gang. Either the only way to leave a gang sometimes is you die. Unfortunately, that's not. So, and so, Tanisha, do you want to, or Brian, do you guys have any thoughts on?
Well, hey, Chris, really appreciate your story. My name is Brian. I'm actually in Nashville, where that school is that you almost got to go to, and I wish you.
Oops. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah. So, I guess my first question, Chris, is I have an 85 Celica. It's got the 22 RE engine, and I'm concerned that the plastic timing chain guides might need to be replaced with maybe some sort of aluminum or metal timing chain guides. So I wanted to get some automotive advice from you on that. And then second, how it's clear that you have a passion and a love for cars. I noticed that the only time in your story so far in this discussion that you didn't bring in the specific year, make, and model for a car was the one that you burned. So maybe if there's anything more symbolic of your love of cars, it's almost like you couldn't call this car that you burned by name, almost similarly in the same way that you couldn't bear to see the face of the person that you had harmed. So I find it really fascinating, and I guess I was wondering, in prison and in your situation now, I mean, obviously you found a lot of ways to reach people and to be creative and to keep hustling and making things happen. But I was wondering, how do you satisfy your passion for cars and engine rebuilding? Have you found a way to be technical inside?
I'm trying to unmute Chris. Sorry, Chris. I accidentally muted you for a second there. Okay, for some reason. Oh, there we go. Chris, are you there?
I still see him as muted.
Okay. I've unmuted all. It's still muted?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to mute all. Cancel. Unmute.
That's a good point, though, Brian. That's a good ass point.
Nisha, I'm going to make you a co-host so that you can.
I'll try it. Yeah.
Man, this is the most critical thing. I was going to get some
I know. And it's like
advice
the
here.
tension is building. I just talked about building tension and narrative with my students. Do you see, is it working on your end?
He's muted on my side.
See, I think it's because he's on the phone. But no, I've asked. Oh, yeah. I think he's gone now, but he'll dial back in.
Back in.
But that was a great point, Brian. That the one time he did not get into the specifics, year, make, model, and color of the car is the one that he destroyed because he couldn't even bear witness to like I can't believe I did that. That's just such that's such a good point. I was like, holy shit, I didn't even think about putting that together yet.
Yes.
It's true. Because then immediately after, we hear about he has to cover this young man's face because he can't bear to acknowledge that that's what he just did. So it's like, even in hindsight and telling a story 20 plus years later. Hey, we're back.
It kept telling me that the host muted me, and I kept pressing star 6 and it wasn't working. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No problem. We were just talking about Brian's question. Did you hear it?
Okay, tell me about the 22R Celica engine. Those are really great classic engines at this point. Very reliable, and they hold up too. You can really modify them and get some juice out of them. It was cutting out on my end. I didn't hear what he said after that, and then I heard him say that, how am I getting my fix, I guess, my automotive fix these days, because I was a gearhead, but is that accurate?
Yeah, and then the other thing I had pointed out, Chris, was just that I found it interesting that the only car that you did not mention the year, make, and model for in all of your story is the one that you destroyed, and I thought that that was interesting.
Was the one that what?
That was the only vehicle that you did not spell out the make, model, and year of was the one that you had destroyed.
Oh, the one we put in the river? Yes, it was a Honda Prelude. I think it was a 92 model. It was one of the first with the VTEC engines.
I had a Honda Prelude VTEC.
Yeah, those are great little cars. Yep, for 5-speed.
Yeah,
Heavily modified. It was lowered. Had the exhaust pack, body kit, all that stuff. Yeah, it was really nice.
So how do you get your mechanic fix inside?
Well, for many years, I just read, motorcycle magazines, car magazines, and that sort of thing. And I don't read them anymore. They actually, I read them. I'm like, man, I get depressed. That's probably the only thing that depresses me now. I have not read those in many years. I read them probably for 15 years, and I was obsessed with them in juvenile detention center and on the street. That was the only thing I read on the street was car manuals. That was it. And so I had all this knowledge over the years, and then eventually I said, man, I need to stop reading this. It's taking up too much time. I need to start reading other stuff, studying, and I started reading more about how to write. And that really got me away from the car magazine stuff, automotive, anything really. And so, today I don't have much time for reading anything because I work 12 to 16 hours, every day doing PR. So, but as far as any kind of mechanical things I work on in here, I build tattoo machines occasionally. And so I've built a ton of those over the years. I started tattooing in 2003. And we can get little motors from DVD players now. Back then, when I started, they still had tape players on the canteen. And so I'm really good at building those things. I repair anything you can think of, mostly electronics, radios, TVs, fans, headphones, cell phones. I can do some really crazy stuff with cell phones and Wi-Fi boxes. And I studied a lot about electronics over the years, mostly books, and then my experience with these devices and the electronics I have available. So I do get a little grease under my fingernails occasionally. And my tools, in here we don't have tools unless every once in a while I come across something that's been smuggled in, or I'll get something in myself. But for most of my time, if I needed to take something apart, I had to actually build the tool before I could take whatever it is apart. And so you learn fabrication, and you have to be creative.
Yes, definitely. So I don't know if you've done going towards young Chris, but if you want to call young Chris, you've written like eight novels. Is that right? Or more than that?
Yes, I had. With Her Fist was originally a trilogy. It was a 3-part series published by Newport Press. So that was 3 books, and I had 3 books with Razor. I had my first book was self-published, short stories by Hooker Crook, and that was in 2012, I think. It took me 2 or 3 years to get that thing done and published, figuring out how to write for one thing, and then self-publishing. And I had a friend that was a pen pal in Michigan helping me type that up and help me self-publish it. And then I did 2 more books, and he was helping me with those, and then he died in 2014. And so at that point is when smartphones were really coming in here.
Yeah.
And so, that's when I learned how to use devices. All those years I read every magazine I could get my hands on, and Popular Science, Wired. I'm into science and tech. And so I knew the possibilities. I knew what was possible. with a smartphone device. With a device, I could get access to the internet. And so I had my friend Roy and I, we would have these great big discussions about what was possible, what we were going to do. And this started back in 2008 when he was still writing his book and I was starting mine. And so, the plan was, hey, get a big publishing contract and buy our way out of prison. That was the point. That was the simple plan of it. We're not going to, we have all this time. We were sitting in a Supermax, 32, which is now shut down. And so we had plenty of time to read and write, and that's all we did. And, so I learned how to use Office apps, so I taught myself that. Just, I really don't read instruction manuals too much as far as, devices go. I'll download something and play with it until I figure it out. I learned how to use Word, Google Docs, and that's what I use now is Google Docs, and all these other social media apps. I've learned all sorts of tricks and shortcuts that I've never seen in any kind of article about it, and that has helped me to, do what I do, PR, with just a phone, and so that's that's my story on that.
Yeah. Did you think? I mean, to be I'm still working on book number 1. I think Steve, you're going through. We've published articles and stuff, but that's amazing to do that in a place where your instrument is illegal. The smartphone is tremendous, and I think we've been talking about. Thank God you have smartphones as well, because of the conditions of parchment.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If I'm on high risk for escape in 2005, I had 2 escapes actually within 3 months in October 2005 and one in 2006. So, they have me on high risk, and they're always shaking me down. Sometimes they'll shake me down every day, even if it's just to walk in my cell and check my window. And like right now, I have an ear tuned to the zone because the captains may come around any minute and see my curtain up and want to know what I'm doing in here, and so I have to jump down and hide my phone. And this has been going on for years and years, and it's living on the edge. You're always worried about the folks coming in and seeing you or coming in and shaking you down, or the whole zone knows I have a phone. The officers that work in the building, they know I have a phone. The administrators know I have a phone. It's just there's so many of them in here now that they don't have time to constantly, send people at me, and I don't bother anybody. So it's become this weird relationship or arrangement, however you want to say that. I don't bother them, they don't bother me, and I do a lot of good around here, and so they let me make it, as they say. As you know, I train guys, and there's a guy next door to me now that his name's Skinny G. Good dude. Richard Lewis is his name. He's 28, 29 years old. He's 6'5", 230 pounds. He's an animal. I mean, he's one of the biggest known knuckleheads in here. And we get around each other, and he's like, hey, man, I want to start working out with you. And so that turned, from push-ups to boxing. And this guy started out throwing clumsy, slow combinations to sharp, fast, footwork, everything. And he's really, really good now, really good. And just 3-4 months time, I think. Yeah, it's 5 months time now. Yeah. And
I
so
feel you're a great coach.
he is.
You learned from a boxing coach that you met early on when you were in prison, correct? Can you just briefly tell that, because we got through the story of
I ran into a guy, an older guy. Yeah, there was a guy in a county jail, older guy, he's in his 50s, and I'm hanging out with some guys my age, and they're like, hey, that guy, you ever heard of him? He's a well-known boxing coach. He used to coach Team USA back in the 80s with Roy Jones Sr., and he's known for training Tiger Stokes in Mississippi, and he's worked with some of the biggest names in boxing. He worked at Kronk Gym in Detroit and in the 80s, and he got to work with Tommy Hearns. In the 90s, De La Hoya. He's worked with Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker. Lennox Lewis, I mean, all these people in the pros. He had more in amateurs. He had more national champs than anybody back then. He had a couple world champs and amateur world champs. Tiger was one. And so I was like, man, I want to go meet this guy and see if he'll show me something. And we were on the yard one day, and I walk up to him and I said, hey, Mr. Williams, how you doing? I heard you was a boxing coach. And he looked over at me and he said, hey, boy, go bother somebody else. So that was my first interaction with my coach. He told me to go bother somebody else.
I love it.
And so we ended up on a zone together, and he saw that I was hardcore about my fitness. I had, even before I knew him, I was working out on the street for many years, and I continued working out in the county jail, and I was running a little workout group doing calisthenics and push-ups and stuff. And he's like, man, maybe there's something to this kid, you know? So he, the next time we talked, he told me that he would show me something. He said, you know, I've seen everything in boxing. I'm sick of it. There's nobody that can get me excited about this anymore. I don't want to watch it on TV. I've seen, you know, all these fights. I've been all over the world putting on shows. And he said, man, but, you know, I see you working out, and I'm thinking this guy could be a prospect. And so we started working out, and every day for 7 months we were on the zone together. We were training, and he was teaching me everything, fundamentals to advanced strategy to, you know, and telling me all these old fight stories. And that's such an important part of that. The protege-mentor relationship is, you know, stories, experiences, and getting the protege excited about advancing and becoming this person. And so I wanted to be a boxer. I wanted it. And so I worked hard. I learned everything. I soaked up everything he taught me. And I started teaching other guys. And I learned that helps internalize something, especially in boxing and fitness, is if you have somebody you can teach it to, then you internalize it better yourself. And I started teaching guys in the county, and then when I got convicted, they shipped me to prison, and I've been teaching guys since then. So I've been teaching boxing for 20 years, and my own abilities have developed, and I have my own style of coaching, and I have taught, I don't know how many guys, you know, it's lost count. I've trained more in just general fitness and calisthenics and CrossFit style than boxing. Not everybody is interested in boxing. You know, most guys, they're okay about doing push-ups and jumping jacks, but they don't want to throw punches when there's 60 guys on the zone looking at you sizing them up, you know. So
Yeah.
It's a self-conscious thing, yeah. So, but I have trained a bunch of guys in boxing and a ton of success stories. And a lot of them have been in lockdown, believe it or not. I've developed the ability to train guys without even being able to see them. I can visualize what they're doing in their cell and tell them, hey, okay, you stand like this, your feet go like this, then your knees, your weight in the center. Now focus on this. Now point your shoulder, you know, elbows in, hands up, relax, chin down. Now step like this. So punch, extend your arm, roll your fist, and that sort of thing. Just step by step, very slow. And then, you know, very patiently take it through it, slow, step by step, and then it goes faster and faster. And they pick up one movement after another, and then before you know it, they're throwing an excellent jab, then they got a 1-2, then the combinations come. And so that's my life here as a coach. You know, right now I'm training 4 guys.
I want to show a video
What's
while you're talking. I'm going to be showing the video. Do you think that the promo for the street riders, could I show that?
Yes, please.
I
They did a good job on that.
Talking about, here, let me share the screen here so everyone can see it. All right. Sorry, I've got so many things on my. All right. Here we go. That's awesome. That's going to be Street Riders, which you can get now on anywhere you can get podcasts like Apple or Spotify. But that is a promo. Tanisha, did you see the promo?
I did. We'll put it up on social media too.
I
to
know.
make sure everybody can hear it and see it.
It's like a trailer for a boxing movie, Chris.
Thank you. Those guys, they're great. They have a great podcast. I love the arrangement of their show, the 3 parts, and trying to get them some traffic on Twitter. I have a pinned tweet going that I'm sending a whole bunch of retweeters to, and that's getting them some traffic.
You
and,
are killing the social media here in terms of like, I feel like because you've been helping my daughter, who's now revising all of her work with all of her reviews. Which
she's getting some great feedback.
Great feedback. How do you meet all these people?
Well, it's most of it is referrals as far as my clients go, and other than that, people, they may like or share something, and I will go and reciprocate, and then conversation starts.
Wow.
And but as far as my business goes, a lot of the friends I have now were former clients. And so I've worked with these people for a very long time, and I've been, despite being where I am and having to constantly hide all the time, and I may lose phones, and it takes me a little bit to get back online. Over the years, I've been very consistent and reliable in my work. Most guys have phones. They can sit in here for hours and hours, all day and night on the phone, and just uninterrupted, other than maybe a security check or something. And
yours
so,
is your
and that's
your
that's
client.
the case with me. Yeah.
So
I don't have a home to take care of. I don't have bills to pay. I don't have a day job to go to, like most authors and publishers do. They have day jobs, so I can run social media, and then I work for peanuts.
Well,
I work dirt cheap.
I also think you really help when we talked about this, and we're going to go into this. We're going to have to maybe start wrapping it up, but Chris, we will have you back, and we're working on some projects. But thank you so much for coming to class today and sharing your story. And I also think that you enjoy your job, get their work out there, spreading, I'm a literature teacher. This makes me thrilled to know how you are helping authors get their work out and share it. So Tanisha, can you give us you started us off. Can you give us final words?
Yeah, for sure. Chris, obviously, thank you so much for, sharing your story with us right now. And I definitely think too, don't underestimate what you're doing and the lack of jobs, so to speak, because I think you've been able to not only be an example of what advocacy and resilience looks like. You're personifying all of that. And you've also been able to, we talked about this previously, but like being a leader from inside and making a community within your own environment, to be that example, to tell things that you would tell young Chris now, right? So I know you're helping others through training, reform, even just by having conversations and providing an alternative of ways to think, live, and rehabilitate their own lives from inside, because we know that the system isn't providing that. So you are, and that's being a service to not only yourself, but also to others. And so you should be applauded, and I commend you for all of that. And so I guess as we wrap up and say thank you, I want to make sure that people listening and watching can contribute in some way. So how can they follow you? How can they support you? And how can they get involved with kids with 47 years in this struggle and our fight to be
Well, ultimately, why I'm doing the show with you guys is I want I want the public to know that the very worst individuals in prison can be rehabilitated. They just need to write leadership. They need to write programs to apply themselves. And so I would like everybody to take a look at Kids with 47 Years on Facebook. Is probably the easiest place. We have a petition going there to change the parole laws, and we need signatures. We need people sharing this, telling people about it, and if we can get the attention of the governor with our organization, they'll take us seriously when we send them emails. And so that's what it's about. It's about rehabilitation and corrections, and there are a lot of people in here that could become somebody. There's so much potential here, so many people that are creative and driven, and they're just being oppressed. They're put down, and they're in an environment where they will not achieve anything, as it is. So things are changing, but we need more people to help the change move along.
We'll do. We'll share all these links. Nancy's been awesome at putting them up here too. Yeah, so we'll share them on our social media accounts. And yeah, you've got an open invitation to come back, and I'll certainly have you on, and anyone else you want on my own little baby podcast too. So for sure. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Thank you for
Thank you, and thank you.
so honest too, to give up, because
vulnerable.
so
I know it's not
vulnerable.
easy going through, going back in stories, and even if 20 plus years, it doesn't, I think about something I did 10 minutes ago, and I still get like, ugh, I don't want to think about it. But and I haven't gone through it.
Right. Yeah.
I know it's not easy.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Takes a
vulnerability.
minute to find the words for it. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it, because I think, we connect with you just knowing your whole story as a human and as a young, as a male, as a, son, as a brother. And so we really—
Young kid makes mistakes. Young kid makes mistakes. We all do it. And that's something that we can all identify with. It's just some people are, our circumstances are always different. But I think you've been able to articulate in such a powerful way, like through your vulnerability and honesty, that we can all relate, and that we're all people and we're all humans, and where we end up, sometimes it can be because of just one simple little mistake. And you never know. It could be any of us, we never know what we would do in a situation where
and then that teenage mind is stuck in that direction, making one mistake after another. Yeah.
Absolutely. But again, thank you so much. We're going to post all of these social links to make sure everyone has them on our stuff. And again, thank you so much for sharing your story and your time with us. We'll certainly be in touch.
Thank you. And thank you for everybody listening. Y'all have a good day.
You too. Stay safe.
Thank you. Hey. Hello.
Yay!
Do you want to watch the video on the way out?
Yeah, cue it up. Then we'll cue it up.
And then, but no, that was so great to talk to Chris.
Love having him on. Love Chris. Such a nice dude. Just good dude. Just good dude.
Good dude.
Good dude, and it's hell of a story, hell of circumstances, But okay, so we'll end this with our own promo for ourselves.
Promo.
Yeah, more to come.
Hold on, let me just refresh it maybe. Here we go.
More writing and fighting.
More writing and fighting. What a spring, and it's gonna be up.
Hell of a fall.
No. Okay, it should be on our YouTube.
Yeah, and you tweeted it too. Oh, that's my face. Oh, that's me right now. I was like, me. I was like, where'd that come from?
Here we go.
There it is. So many things.
This is it.
Yeah.
We had to build the tension.
And
All right.
Where is it?
We're professors. We're not technicians. Here we go.
So the Boys Club was not necessarily a conscious effort by men who got together in the big men summit and decided to be asked, but just a system that is just feeding itself in a way that makes it very hard for a woman to break into. We seem to seek permission to do these things. We seem to seek permission to have these roles, to say the things that we need to say, or, and that's why I really do love the idea of confronting people.
Me too.
Yeah, now I'm getting emotional. But even like right before my fight, when Ahmed Arbery, when he got shot, it freaked me out because like when I jog, when my hair's out, I look like Ahmed Arbery. I look like a teenage boy when I go jogging down the street. And to think that like something that I do daily could get me shot just because I look suspicious, and the fact that I look suspicious is because I'm Black, like that just destroyed me.
Black people getting killed by police in Muhammad Ali's day, as Randy pointed out, that's what brought Malcolm X to Los Angeles. Black people getting killed by police in 1999, that's what pushes Britain to becoming a historian and helping give us Blood Brothers, which is an amazing book. If you guys haven't read it, please read it. And 2020, I don't know if we're allowed to swear on here, but we're still protesting this shit.
People talk about Colin Kaepernick and get upset when you try to compare it to Muhammad Ali. But I think the thing here that we forget is there was a long period of time when Muhammad Ali was hated. There was a long period of time when Colin Kaepernick was hated. They don't love you until you're gone. I interviewed him for 3 hours, and we really did have a great connection. Had Thiago Alves, Malky Kawa, and Vanderlei Silva in the back of my car as well. So it's a pretty cool, like, if a street fight had broken out, I'd have just sat in the car and chilled. You know what I mean?
But I remember him saying, "My name's Conor McGregor, remember my fucking name." And I did remember it, and I would have bet my life. I would have bet my life that if he ever made it to the UFC, he wouldn't do very much. Because why would he? He was just a fan. He was just a huge, massive, MMA running through his blood fan, and there was 1,000 of them.
I sort of coined it. I called him the what did I call it? The Octagon Ranger. Octagon official, Octagon Ranger. Now, some referees have actually pulled me up and said, I don't want to be an Octagon Ranger. I'm like, I don't care.
I don't care.
I was about 50% prepped on the show, and then the fights obviously moved around. We do a lot of voiceovers in advance. Unlike a lot of these other live event broadcasts, we're 7 hours. So this is like back-to-back Super Bowls every time we sit down to do one of these.
Yeah.
So that's it.
More to come.
More to come. Everybody, please listen to Tanisha's new podcast, which is breaking, barriers and,
I don't know about that. It's breaking my spirit. I just posted my rant about the Clippers meltdown.
Oh, so you know what? I thought about this morning and I was going to say something, but I'm sorry.
I'm not doing great. Watch what I just posted.
I'm going to. Everyone go.
It's funny. Yeah. IHQ pod is the it's nuts. But we'll do this again next week.
We'll do this again next week. All right. Take care.
Bye, everybody.